My husband left me a rundown house in Montana. But when I went inside, what I found left me frozen in place, unable to breathe. I never imagined the day of the will reading would become the moment my own daughter turned her back on me. After 42 years of marriage, I thought I understood the man I had built my life with. Yet there I sat in the lawyer's office as his words shattered everything I believed. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This story gets much more intense, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The family residence in Helena, along with all connected assets, will go to my daughter, Emma Caldwell Whitmore. Emma's fingers immediately locked around her husband's hand, a smirk forming on both their lips. They didn't even attempt to hide their satisfaction. I sat there quietly, trying to hold my composure like I always had. My husband, Richard, had been a sensible man. Surely he had left something meaningful for me too. The lawyer cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. And to my wife, Margaret Caldwell, I leave the property I recently purchased in Montana, located near Glacier National Park. Silence filled the room. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to grow louder. That's it, Emma blurted, looking from the lawyer to me, her voice laced with disbelief. The property includes about 50 acres of land and a cabin Mr. Caldwell purchased 5 years ago, the lawyer explained. I felt dozens of eyes pressing against me. Richard had never once mentioned owning land in Montana, not in all our decades together. Mother can stay with us, of course, Emma said with a sweetness that felt rehearsed, squeezing her husband Oliver's hand as though seeking approval. His stiff nod, paired with a smile that never reached his eyes, told me exactly how genuine that offer was. 2 weeks later, I understood their true intentions. My place in the home I had once ruled had been reduced to the guest room. No longer the lady of the house, I became the help, cooking, cleaning, and vanishing whenever they entertained. I wasn't a mother or a partner anymore, just a burden they had inherited along with the Montana property. One evening, after yet another dinner party where I had cooked for everyone and faded into the background, Oliver cornered me in the kitchen. He swirled a glass of whiskey, Richard's crystal set from our wedding gifts, and spoke with a coldness that cut through me. This arrangement isn't working, Margaret. I stacked dishes into the dishwasher, pretending not to notice the sharpness in his tone. I try to stay out of your way, I answered quietly. That's not enough, he said, his voice firm now. Richard knew exactly what he was doing when he left you that shack in Montana. He knew you'd be too weak to live on your own. I straightened, the dishcloth still in my hand. Excuse me. Let's be real, he continued, arrogance dripping from every word. You've never paid a bill in your life, never had a job. You spent decades as a housewife while Richard carried you. And now you expect us to do the same? We're not running a charity. Before I could respond, Emma walked in. My heart leapt with hope that she would finally stand up for me, that she would remind her husband that I was her mother. But she only sighed, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and impatience. Mom, we've been talking. We think it's best if you go see that Montana property. It's yours after all. Maybe it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. The next morning, my suitcases sat neatly packed in the hallway. Oliver didn't even try to hide his smugness as he handed me an envelope with the keys and directions. Don't come back until you figured out how to support yourself, he said flatly. Emma wrapped her arms around me, but even her embrace was stiff, almost lifeless. It's for your own good, Mom. You need independence. At 68 years old, I found myself abandoned, stripped of the life I had built, and pushed out by the very daughter I had raised with love. I loaded my modest belongings into the small sedan Richard had bought me a few years earlier. As I drove away, tears blurred my vision until the highway stretched into nothing more than streaks of light. 9 long hours separated Helena from the property near Glacier National Park. Each passing mile weighed heavier on my heart. What awaited me at the end of this journey? A broken-down shack where I was expected to rebuild a life I no longer recognized? By the time the gravel road stretched beneath my tires, the sun was sinking, throwing long shadows across the land. My heart clenched when the cabin finally came into view, a neglected 2-story house with a sagging porch, missing shingles, and shattered windows. Oh, Richard. I whispered through trembling lips, pulling the car to a stop. Why would you do this to me? Exhausted and hollow, I dragged myself up the creaking steps. The key stuck in the lock, resisting as if it too didn't want me there. The door groaned when I pushed it open, and I stumbled inside, searching for a light switch. The moment the bulb flickered on, I dropped my suitcase. My breath caught in my throat, because the inside of that house looked nothing like the wreckage outside. The inside of that house stopped me in my tracks. My suitcase slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud, but I barely noticed. It wasn't the dusty ruin I had expected. Instead, a soft glow spread across polished wooden floors covered with warm rugs. A modern kitchen with gleaming appliances sat to my left, while a comfortable living room stretched out ahead, tastefully arranged as if someone had been preparing for company. I blinked, unable to process what I was seeing. For a moment, I wondered if grief had twisted my mind, creating an illusion. But no, this was real. Then my gaze fell to the dining table. It was set for one. A plate with the remains of a meal sat untouched. Beside it, a half-full coffee mug. An open notebook lay nearby, its pages covered in handwriting I recognized instantly. My knees nearly buckled. That slanted, deliberate script belonged to Richard. Hands trembling, I reached for the notebook. My breath caught when I saw the date at the top of the page. 3 days ago. Richard had been dead for 3 weeks. The first line burned itself into my memory. Margaret will be arriving soon. Everything must be ready. God, I hope she understands why I had to do it this way. I dropped onto the nearest chair, the room spinning. My husband was supposed to be gone. I had buried him. I had wept over his casket. And now his handwriting, dated just days ago, sat before me as though mocking my grief. Richard. My voice cracked as I whispered his name into the empty room. Before I could gather myself, a sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. It wasn't the hum of the refrigerator or the ticking clock. This was different, soft, deliberate, like a footstep. My heart hammered. Hello. My voice came out shaky, barely audible. I grabbed the nearest object I could find, a heavy brass candlestick from the mantel, and clutched it like a weapon. Is someone there? Silence. The only answer was the pounding of my pulse in my ears. Still, I forced myself to move forward, each step slow, my body tense as if expecting someone to lunge at me. The hallway stretched out, lined with rooms that looked disturbingly lived in. A study with papers scattered across a desk, a bedroom with sheets tangled as if someone had recently slept there. Even the closet contained men's clothing, Richard's size, but the style was different. Clothes I had never seen him wear. I swallowed hard, confusion clawing at me. Then I noticed it. A bookshelf in the study wasn't flush with the wall. My instinct screamed something was wrong. When I pulled it, it swung outward like a door, revealing a narrow, shadowed passage. The air inside was cooler, the smell of dust and stone lingering. I stepped in cautiously, clutching the candlestick so tightly my knuckles turned white. What I found on the other side looked like a scene out of a thriller. Walls plastered with photographs, newspaper articles, and maps. Strings and pins connected names and faces I recognized. Politicians, business leaders from Helena, and even Oliver. In the center, a desk sat covered with monitors, files, and a sealed envelope with my name scrawled across the front in Richard's unmistakable handwriting. My throat tightened as I reached for it. The envelope shook in my trembling hands. I tore it open. My dearest Margaret, it began. If you are reading this, you've made it here. I am so sorry for the pain and confusion I've caused you. But you must know the truth. I am not dead, not in the way you think. I gasped, clutching the paper to my chest. The letter unfolded into a confession that twisted my world upside down. Richard explained how years ago he had stumbled upon evidence of corruption while working on financial audits. He discovered Oliver, my son-in-law, at the center of a massive scheme involving state officials and shell companies siphoning money from public funds. He had tried to gather proof quietly, but the deeper he went, the more dangerous it became. Their phones had been tapped, their home bugged, their every move monitored. Richard realized he was marked for death. The heart attack was staged, the letter continued. The funeral had to be real. or they would never believe it. I needed you to grieve, Margaret. I needed it to be convincing. I couldn't tell you. If I had, they would have seen through the lie. I am alive, hidden here, building a case to bring them down. But you must be careful. Oliver knows you won't last on your own. And Emma, she has chosen to side with him. She has known about his crimes for years. She is part of it. Do not trust her. Do not go back to Helena. This house contains everything needed to expose them, but that makes you their target now. My hand shook as I read the words again and again. Emma, my own daughter. The little girl I had rocked to sleep. The young woman I had cheered for at her graduation had known all along. She had sided with Oliver against me. Tears blurred the page, but I forced myself to keep reading. The letter gave me a choice. Deliver the evidence to a federal agent named Daniel Harris in Kalispell, or take the cash and new identity hidden in the master bedroom safe and disappear forever. I didn't know what to think. My daughter was a criminal. My husband wasn't dead. My entire life had been built on lies. Then another sound jolted me. This one wasn't faint. It was deliberate, the crunch of tires on gravel outside. I rushed to the nearest window and parted the blinds. Headlights cut through the darkness as two black SUVs rolled up the dirt path, stopping directly in front of the cabin. Men in dark clothing stepped out, their movements sharp and purposeful. My stomach turned to ice. Oliver's voice from days earlier rang in my head. Don't come back until you figured out how to support yourself. We're not running a charity. No, they had never expected me to stay. They thought I'd take one look at the broken porch, cry, and drive back to Helena. But I hadn't. I had walked inside, and now I knew their secret, which meant they were here to erase me. The doorknob rattled. Then the sound of breaking glass tore through the night. My heart thundered as I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. For the first time in my life, I held the truth that could destroy the people who had discarded me. They thought I was weak, fragile, incapable of standing alone. But they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The sharp crack of glass breaking jolted me into action. I dropped the letter, my hands clutching the candlestick so tightly it hurt. My whole body trembled, but there was no time to think about fear. I stumbled back toward the hidden passage, every sound amplified. The crunch of boots outside, the low murmur of men's voices, the faint creak of the front door as someone pushed against it. They were inside. For a split second, I stood frozen in the study, torn between running and fighting. All my life, I had been underestimated. The housewife who followed her husband's lead. The mother who never challenged her daughter's choices. The quiet woman who blended into the background. But tonight, if I stayed frozen, I would die. I forced myself into the passage, pulling the bookshelf shut behind me. My chest heaved as I leaned against the cool stone wall, listening. Muffled voices filled the room I had just left. She has to be here. The car's outside. Search every room. Don't leave a trace. The words struck like knives. They knew I was here. They weren't just searching, they were hunting me. The narrow passage sloped downward, dim lights embedded in the floor casting a faint glow. My steps echoed softly as I hurried, clutching the candlestick in one hand. Each second stretched into eternity. When the corridor opened into a concrete room, I stopped, struggling to catch my breath. The space looked like a hidden control center. Multiple screens flickered, showing live footage of the house, the kitchen, the living room, the men moving in formation, their rifles gleaming under the lights. Their precision chilled me. This wasn't a random group of thugs. They were trained. My gaze shifted to the main console. A red button sat there, labeled in Richard's handwriting. Emergency, 30 seconds to exit. Next to it, a note. Only if there's no other choice. My hand hovered over it, trembling. What would it trigger? An explosion? A trap? I didn't know. My heart pounded in my ears as I turned away, spotting a small backpack hanging from a hook on the wall. I yanked it down and unzipped it. Inside lay bundles of cash, several passports with my photo under different names, and my breath hitched, a handgun. For years, Richard had taken me to shooting ranges now and then, always saying it was just in case. I had never imagined just in case would mean this. I stuffed the bag onto my back, its weight grounding me forcing me to breathe. I checked the wall map glowing faintly under another light. Tunnels stretched like veins beneath the cabin, some leading to the forest, others connecting to old mining shafts. Above me, the men's voices grew sharper. Found something. I turned toward one of the monitors. A man had discovered the secret study, pulling the bookshelf wide open. Soon, all of them crowded inside, rifling through Richard's carefully gathered evidence. "This is it," one muttered. "Everything we need." "Call it in," another said, pulling out a phone. I pressed closer to the screen, trying to catch every detail. The man's face hardened as he listened to whoever was on the other end. Understood. No traces. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and raised his voice. "Burn it all down. And find her." A chill spread through me. Not only did they plan to destroy Richard's evidence, they meant to kill me inside these walls. My eyes darted back to the red button. My breathing quickened. If I waited, they'd find me. If I pressed it, I had no idea what would happen. But Richard had built this place. He had left it for me. For once, I had to trust him. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I moved quickly to another panel on the wall labeled House Controls. My fingers fumbled with the switches. Suddenly, the entire cabin above went black. Lights cut out. The alarm shrieked into the night, piercing and relentless. On the monitors, the men shouted in confusion, their shadows lurching as they fumbled with flashlights. I slammed my palm onto the emergency button. A calm, familiar voice filled the room. Richard's voice, recorded. "Emergency protocol activated. Controlled demolition in 30 seconds. Proceed to safety immediately." The words sent a strange calm over me. He had planned for this. He had thought of me. I slung the backpack higher onto my shoulders and ran into the tunnel-marked primary exit. Behind me, mechanical sounds echoed through the passage, metal shutters slamming down, locks snapping into place. Then came the rumble. The ground shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. A muffled explosion thundered through the mountain. I staggered, bracing myself against the wall. Richard hadn't designed it to destroy everything, just enough to collapse the hidden rooms and trap anyone inside. My chest tightened with a mix of fear and grim satisfaction. The men were sealed inside the house, cut off from me and the evidence they thought they had gathered. I kept moving, the tunnel sloping deeper into darkness. The concrete gave way to rough stone walls, moisture seeping from cracks, the air cooler and damp. I pressed forward, guided by the faint glow of emergency lights. For nearly an hour, I walked, every step echoing with the weight of my new reality. My husband was alive. My daughter had betrayed me. Men had tried to end my life, and I had just triggered an explosion to escape them. When I finally emerged into the open air, the night sky stretched endlessly above me, glittering with stars. I turned back, just in time to see distant lights flashing through the trees. Fire trucks, police cars. To anyone arriving, the cabin would look intact. They would never know what lay sealed inside. But I knew, and I knew this was only the beginning. The forest swallowed me whole as I stepped out of the tunnel's hidden exit. Cold air bit at my cheeks, carrying the faint smell of pine and damp soil. For a moment, I just stood there, gulping in the freedom of fresh air, but my relief was short-lived. In the distance, flashes of red and blue lights pierced the night sky, reflecting against the tree line. Emergency vehicles. The sound of sirens carried faintly through the mountains. I crouched low, clutching the backpack tight. If the fire crews discovered the tunnel, they might seal it. And if those men had managed to escape before the collapse, my blood ran cold. I couldn't risk staying anywhere near the cabin. The map Richard had left behind swam in my memory. He had marked different escape routes, safe points, and even a secondary cabin a couple of miles north. My body ached, every muscle screaming after the long walk underground, but I forced my feet to move. The night was alive with sounds, branches creaking, distant owls calling, the rustle of unseen animals in the underbrush. Every noise made me flinch, half expecting armed men to appear from the shadows. I wrapped my arms around myself as if that could stop the trembling. I whispered aloud, just to hear something human. "You thought I'd break, didn't you, Richard? You thought I couldn't survive alone." Even Oliver believed it. Maybe even Emma, My voice faltered at my daughter's name, tears pricking my eyes. But you're wrong. You're all wrong. The words didn't make me stronger, but they kept me moving. After what felt like hours, the faint outline of a small hunting cabin came into view, perched against the backdrop of towering pines. Relief washed over me so sharply that my knees almost gave out. The place was crude, nothing like the hidden luxury of Richard's Montana house, but to me, it looked like salvation. Inside, the air was cold but dry. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with canned goods and bottled water. A cot stood in the corner, and on the table sat a satellite phone. I dropped the backpack onto the table, my hands shaking as I reached for the phone. I hesitated. What if this was a trap too? What if someone else had placed it here, waiting for me to reveal myself? My heart pounded, but in the end, I couldn't ignore the only chance at help I had. With trembling fingers, I dialed the single program number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered. Security protocol. For a second, I froze. Then Richard's words from the letter surfaced in my mind. I forced myself to speak. Blue heron at midnight. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Margaret? My God, is it really you? My knees gave way, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. It was him. Richard. Alive. Richard, my voice cracked. You're alive. I'm so sorry, love, he whispered, emotion thick in his voice. I never wanted you to be pulled into this. Are you safe? Tears slid down my cheeks, soaking my lips with their salt. Safe? I was nearly killed tonight. They came for me, Richard. Men with guns. I triggered whatever you built into that house. He didn't answer right away. Then, low and heavy, he said, I was afraid of that. Did you activate the emergency protocol? Yes, I whispered. They're trapped, or at least delayed. But they'll come again. You know they will. You need to leave, Margaret. Under the mattress in that cabin, there's a tracker. Activate it, and I'll have someone pick you up within 6 hours. 6 hours? It might as well have been 6 years. My mind raced with images of men in black SUVs scouring the woods, dogs sniffing out my trail, Emma standing by Oliver's side with that look of cold indifference. No, I said suddenly, surprising even myself. I'm not waiting here. I'm not hiding. Richard's voice broke. Please listen to me. I can't lose you. Not again. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, my jaw trembling. Do you understand what they've done? Emma, our daughter. She knew everything. She wanted me gone. She watched while Oliver threw me out. She wanted me dead, Richard. His breath caught. I know. I've seen the evidence. But, no buts, I interrupted. For the first time in decades, I cut him off. I won't run anymore. You staged your death. You left me to grieve alone. And now I've seen what you've hidden. I have the evidence. I have everything I need. I'm going to Kalispell. To that federal agent you mentioned. I'll end this myself. Silence stretched between us. So heavy I thought the line had gone dead. Finally, he spoke, voice thick with both love and regret. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. A bitter laugh slipped from me. Yes, I am. When I ended the call, the cabin felt impossibly still. I set the phone down and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. My hair was tangled, my face lined with exhaustion, but in my eyes there was something I hadn't seen in years, resolve. They had tried to throw me away. They had underestimated me. But I wasn't weak. Not anymore. By dawn, I would begin my journey to Kalispell. Not as a grieving widow, not as a discarded mother, but as the woman carrying the truth that would destroy them all. The night dragged on, every second stretching longer than the last. I barely slept in that cabin, my body lying stiff on the thin cot, eyes darting at every creak of the wooden walls. My mind replayed Richard's voice again and again, his words twisting inside me. He was alive. He had faked his death. He had abandoned me to protect me, or so he said. But part of me couldn't shake the anger boiling beneath the relief. When dawn finally broke, I forced myself up, muscles stiff from the cold and fear. I pulled the backpack closer and dug through its contents. The bundles of cash smelled faintly of dust, but they were real, thick stacks that would keep me going for months if needed. The passport stared back at me with names that weren't mine. Susan Miller, Diane Clark, Ruth Thompson. My face, but lives I had never lived. For a long moment, I just stared at them, torn between choices. I could take one, disappear and leave all this behind. Become someone else, live in peace, maybe even freedom. But the thought made bile rise in my throat. If I vanished, Oliver and Emma would win. They would continue their lives of luxury, untouchable, while the blood of their crime stained everything we had once built as a family. No, I wouldn't run. I found a small mirror in the backpack and studied my reflection. The woman who stared back at me didn't look like the wife Richard had left or the mother Emma had cast aside. She looked older, yes, worn, but also sharper, more alive, eyes burning with a fire I hadn't felt in years. I can do this, I whispered to her. I have to. By mid-morning, I had packed the essentials, cash, the gun, the passports, and Richard's letter folded neatly in my coat pocket. The rest I left behind. I couldn't carry the weight of everything. Not physically, not emotionally. The dirt road stretched endlessly, winding through the thick forest. I walked for nearly an hour before I heard it, the distant hum of an engine. My stomach clenched. I crouched behind a cluster of pines, heart hammering in my ears. A black SUV rolled slowly down the path, windows tinted, moving with the deliberate caution of hunters tracking prey. My breath caught. It couldn't be coincidence. They were searching. I pressed myself tighter against the tree, barely daring to breathe as the vehicle crept past. My hand instinctively wrapped around the cold steel of the gun hidden beneath my coat. For a moment, I imagined stepping out, firing, proving to myself that I wasn't helpless. But my hand shook too much. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. When the sound of the engine faded, I forced myself back onto the road, legs weak but determined. Hours later, I reached a small highway and flagged down an old pickup truck with peeling red paint. The driver, a man in his 60s with a weathered face, slowed down and leaned out the window. "Ma'am, you all right? You look like you've walked a long way." I hesitated. My instinct screamed not to trust anyone, but my body was exhausted. I forced a smile. "My car broke down a few miles back. I'm trying to get to Kalispell." He nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the bag slung over my shoulder. "Hop in. I'm heading that way myself." The seat smelled faintly of tobacco and old leather. I clutched the backpack on my lap, knuckles white. The man introduced himself as Carl, a retired mechanic, and asked no questions beyond the polite. I gave him only a false name, Susan, and he didn't press further. But as we drove, a pair of black SUVs appeared in the rearview mirror. My chest tightened. I forced myself not to turn around too quickly, but I recognized the shape, the tint of the windows. They were following. Carl seemed to notice my sudden silence. "You okay back there?" I swallowed hard, forcing a nod. "Just nervous. Been a long couple of days." The SUVs kept their distance, never overtaking, just trailing like shadows. My pulse pounded louder with each mile. "Can you take a different road?" I blurted suddenly. Carl frowned. "Different road? Why?" "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "Just trust me. Take the next left." He gave me a long look, suspicion mixing with concern, but when he saw the desperation in my eyes, he sighed and turned onto a winding country lane. The SUVs didn't follow immediately. They kept straight, but I knew better than to believe I had lost them. Carl pulled over near a diner on the outskirts of a small town. "Ma'am, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but I think this is where I leave you." I wanted to beg him to keep going, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He didn't deserve to be dragged into this. "Thank you," I whispered, slipping $100 bill into his hand before stepping out. Inside the diner, the warm smell of coffee and frying bacon wrapped around me, almost enough to make me forget the danger outside. But I couldn't relax. Not when the evidence Richard had gathered weighed heavy in my bag. Not when Oliver and Emma's faces flashed in my mind like ghosts. I slid into a booth and ordered coffee, keeping my back to the wall, eyes on the parking lot. Every time the door opened, my body tensed. I pulled out Richard's letter again, tracing the ink with my fingers. Federal Agent Daniel Harris, Kalispell. The name was my lifeline. If I could just reach him, if I could just hand over the files, maybe, just maybe, this nightmare would end. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Oliver wouldn't let me walk into a federal office unchallenged. Emma wouldn't sit quietly while I destroyed the life she had chosen. Somewhere, somehow they were waiting, and I wasn't sure yet if I was strong enough to face them. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, untouched. My hands wrapped around the chipped white mug, not for the drink, but for the illusion of warmth, something to hold onto while my mind spiraled. Every time the bell above the diner door jingled, my stomach twisted, bracing for the sight of dark suits and cold eyes. But it was always just locals, farmers in worn jackets, an older couple holding hands, a group of teenagers laughing too loudly. They looked at me like I was invisible, and for once, I prayed that I was. I pulled Richard's letter from my coat again, smoothing the creases with shaking fingers. His words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I had loved this man, trusted him with my life, only to discover he had faked his death and left me in the middle of a storm I never asked for. And Emma, my only child, had stood by Oliver's side, knowing what he had done, what he was capable of. How could a mother's heart survive that kind of betrayal? I dabbed my eyes with a napkin, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Falling apart here wouldn't help. I needed to move. I asked the waitress for the restroom and slipped into the small, dimly lit space at the back of the diner. My reflection in the cracked mirror startled me. The woman staring back didn't look like a victim. Her hair was messy, eyes rimmed red, face pale, but beneath that was something harder, sharper. A woman who had survived being cast out, hunted, nearly killed. "I won't let them break me," I whispered, gripping the sink until my knuckles whitened. Not anymore. Back in the booth, I paid quickly, sliding bills onto the table before stepping outside. The sky had turned gray, clouds heavy with the threat of rain. My gaze darted to the parking lot. No SUVs. Not yet. But the hairs on the back of my neck prickled. They were out there, somewhere, watching. I tightened my coat and walked briskly down the street, head low. Kalispell was still hours away. I couldn't risk hitching another ride. Not when I knew they'd be tracking me. I had to disappear into the crowd, blend in until I found another way forward. At the edge of town, I spotted a small bus depot. My heart lifted slightly when I saw a schedule posted on the wall. One bus, heading toward Kalispell, leaving in 30 minutes. I bought a ticket with cash and sank into a hard plastic chair in the waiting area. Minutes crawled by. A mother soothed her crying toddler. A young man scrolled through his phone, earphones blocking out the world. I sat perfectly still, clutching my bag, every nerve stretched tight. Then I saw it. Through the window, across the street, parked half in shadow, one of the SUVs. My breath caught. The tinted window rolled down slightly, just enough for me to glimpse the shape of a man inside, phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't in a rush. He was patient, waiting. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. My pulse hammered as I scanned the depot. The bus driver had just arrived, chatting with a clerk. People were distracted. No one noticed the silent war raging in my chest. I couldn't sit still. If I boarded the bus, they'd follow. If I ran, they'd chase. The PA system crackled, announcing boarding for my route. My legs carried me forward automatically, though dread tightened around me like a vice. The driver glanced at my ticket, nodded, and I climbed aboard. The bus smelled faintly of diesel and stale air. I slid into a seat near the back, pressing my forehead against the window. The SUV remained across the street. The man inside never moved. As the bus rumbled to life and pulled away, I dared to hope maybe they'd let me go. But then, in the distance, headlights flicked on. 2 SUVs this time. They followed at a measured pace, never too close, but never far behind. I closed my eyes, gripping the seat in front of me. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "Just stay calm." Hours passed, the scenery shifting from small towns to wide stretches of forest. Rain began to fall, streaking the windows. My exhaustion caught up to me, and for a moment I drifted into a restless sleep. A hand on my shoulder jolted me awake. My heart leapt into my throat. It was the bus driver. "End of the line, ma'am." Kalispell. I stumbled off the bus into the cool night air, my body stiff from sitting so long. The terminal was nearly empty, just a few people rushing to waiting cars. I tightened my grip on the bag and scanned the lot. The SUVs were nowhere in sight. Relief surged through me, but it was fragile, thin. I knew better than to believe they were gone. I walked quickly toward the street, searching for the address Richard had given me. A federal building. The office of Agent Daniel Harris. My lifeline. But as I turned the corner, my steps faltered. Leaning casually against a lamppost was Oliver. His suit was pressed, his smile sharp, his eyes glittering with something cruel. He straightened, adjusting his cufflinks as though he had all the time in the world. "Mother-in-law," he said smoothly, his voice carrying easily across the empty street. "Took you long enough." My breath caught. My legs screamed to run. But I stood frozen, the weight of betrayal heavier than ever. He had found me, and now there was no one left between us. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The rain pattered softly on the pavement, neon lights from the bus terminal flickering weakly behind me, and there he was, Oliver. Calm, confident, exactly the way a predator looks when he knows his prey has nowhere to go. I clutched the strap of my bag, so tightly my fingers ached. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. How did you find me?" He chuckled low, pushing off the lamppost and strolling toward me as if we were simply meeting for coffee. "Come now, Margaret. Did you really think you could sneak across Montana on buses and back roads without me knowing? Every step you've taken, I've been ahead of you." I took a step back. "You shouldn't be here." "On the contrary," he said smoothly, sliding his hands into his coat pockets. "I should be exactly here, to collect what belongs to me." "Nothing belongs to you," I snapped, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. His smile faltered for just a second, then returned, sharper. "That evidence in your bag, it doesn't concern you. You're carrying something far more dangerous than you understand. Do you really want to ruin Emma's life with this? Your own daughter." The sound of her name made my throat tighten. My voice wavered. "She chose this. She stood by you. She betrayed me. Betrayed you." His laugh was bitter, echoing off the empty street. "No, Margaret. She grew up. She realized the world isn't built on fairy tales and family dinners. She chose power, wealth, survival. All things you never gave her." I felt his words like physical blows. "I gave her everything," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "I gave her my life. And she gave you hers," Oliver countered, stepping closer, his tone darkening. "Until she realized you were a weakness, a liability. Do you think she'd have the life she does now if she'd clung to your skirts forever? No. She wanted more. I gave her more." I shook my head, fighting back the sob building in my chest. "You poisoned her." He tilted his head, studying me. "Or maybe I just showed her the truth. You've spent your entire life in a bubble, Margaret. Cooking, cleaning, waiting on Richard. Never questioning. Always trusting. Do you have any idea how pathetic that looks to someone like Emma?" My grip on the bag tightened. If she truly thinks that, then she was never my daughter at all. His smile vanished completely now, replaced by cold fury. "Hand me the evidence. Right now, or you won't make it out of this city alive." For a moment, fear almost broke me. My heart thundered, my hands trembled. But then Richard's words echoed in my memory. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." I straightened my shoulders, meeting Oliver's gaze. "No." The single word hung between us like a blade. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing. Then he gave a slow, mocking clap. "Impressive. Finally found a backbone, have you?" "Pity it's too late." Behind him, headlights cut through the rain. Another SUV pulled into view, idling at the curb. The door opened and two men stepped out, dressed in black, their movements sharp and practiced. Oliver smirked, turning slightly toward them. "Take the bag." My chest constricted. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Not until the men advanced, their footsteps heavy against the wet pavement. I forced myself into motion, spinning toward the federal building just a block away. My shoes slapped against the ground as I sprinted, the bag bouncing painfully against my side. "Stop her!" Oliver's voice thundered behind me. The men gave chase, their steps closing in fast. My lungs burned, my legs screaming with each stride, but the glowing entrance of the building pulled me forward like a beacon. "Help!" I screamed, my voice raw. "Somebody help me!" The street was nearly deserted, rain keeping most people indoors, but a security guard at the building's entrance looked up sharply. He reached for his radio as I barreled toward him. Then a hand clamped around my arm. I shrieked, twisting violently, the bag nearly slipping from my grip. One of the men yanked hard, trying to wrestle it away. Panic surged through me, raw and blinding. Without thinking, I pulled the gun from my coat pocket, the cold metal heavy in my shaking hands. "Let go!" I cried, my voice trembling but fierce. For a split second, everything froze. The man's eyes widened as he registered the weapon. Oliver's voice cut through the rain like a whip. "Don't be stupid, Margaret. You won't use it." But I did. The gun went off, the recoil slamming into my arms. The man stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, a strangled cry tearing from his lips. Shock flooded me. I had never truly believed I'd pull the trigger. My body shook violently, bile rising in my throat. The second man hesitated, his eyes darting from me to Oliver. Oliver's face twisted into rage. "Get her. Now." Before they could move, the security guard rushed forward, shouting into his radio. "Drop it. Step back." His voice carried authority, his weapon already drawn. The two men froze, caught between orders and exposure. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Oliver's eyes locked on mine, cold and murderous. "This isn't over," he hissed, before signaling his men. They retreated quickly, vanishing into the SUV before peeling away into the night. I collapsed against the wall, the gun slipping from my hand, tears streaming down my face. The guard steadied me, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, you're safe now. Just breathe." Safe. The word felt foreign, fragile. Because deep down, I knew Oliver was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. The federal building loomed over me like a fortress, its stone walls glistening under the rain as the sirens faded into the night. My knees felt weak, my body trembling with exhaustion and shock. The security guard guided me inside, his steady hand on my arm the only thing keeping me from collapsing. Once through the metal doors, warmth enveloped me. Bright lights replaced the shadows, but they were harsh, almost unforgiving. I felt exposed, like every crack in me was on display. My hands were still shaking when two more guards appeared, their eyes sharp as they glanced at the gun on the ground outside, then at me. "She's with me," the first guard said firmly. "Someone tried to assault her right outside. We need to get Agent Harris immediately." The name struck through my days like lightning. Agent Daniel Harris, the man Richard had written about. My lifeline. I was ushered into a waiting room, the walls sterile and the air humming with the low buzz of fluorescent lights. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. My breath came shallow, my thoughts tangled, Richard's letter burning in my pocket. Finally, the door opened. A tall man in his early 40s stepped inside, his dark hair slicked back, his suit damp from the rain. His presence filled the room instantly, not with threat, but with authority. His gaze was steady, piercing, the kind of eyes that measured truth from lies in a heartbeat. "Mrs. Caldwell," he asked, his voice calm even. I flinched slightly at the name, then nodded. "Yes." He extended his hand, and I placed mine in his, surprised at how steady his grip felt compared to my trembling one. "I'm Special Agent Daniel Harris. You're safe here now, but I need you to tell me everything." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, words caught between grief and fear. Then, almost in a rush, they spilled out. "My husband, Richard, he's alive. He faked his death. He left me this house in Montana. Only it wasn't just a house. It was a cover. He's been gathering evidence for years. Against Oliver. Against my daughter." The last words cracked in my throat. My face burned with shame and heartbreak. Harris listened intently, no sign of doubt flickering across his expression. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. Do you have this evidence with you? I clutched the bag to my chest like a lifeline. Yes, files, documents, his notes, everything he collected. It's all here. I set the bag on the table, my fingers reluctant to let go. Harris opened it carefully, pulling out folders thick with paper, USB drives, even photographs clipped together. His brow furrowed as he skimmed through a few pages. "This is substantial," he murmured, almost to himself. Then he looked back at me. "You have no idea how important this is." "I do," I whispered, "because they've been trying to kill me since the moment I found it." His eyes softened just slightly. "And you're saying your daughter is involved?" The question cut deeper than any knife. My chest heaved. She knew. She's known for years. She chose him. She chose Oliver over me, over her father, over everything. My voice broke, tears sliding down my cheeks. She's not the little girl I raised anymore. She's someone else. Harris closed the bag gently, folding his hands on the table. "Mrs. Caldwell, what you've done tonight is more than most people could bear. You stood up against people who would rather see you silenced. That takes courage. Courage." The word felt foreign in my ears, like it belonged to someone else. And yet, a part of me clung to it desperately. He stood, gesturing for me to follow. "We need to get you into protective custody while we process this. Oliver won't stop. If what's in these files is accurate, he and his associates have the resources to come after you again." The thought made my skin crawl, but I shook my head. "I don't want to hide anymore. I've been hiding my whole life. I want this to end." "And it will," Harris assured me. "But we need to be smart. One wrong move, and he'll slip through our fingers. We can't let that happen." As we walked down the sterile hallway, the weight of the night pressed heavier on me. My legs wobbled, my chest ached, but beneath it all was a strange spark. For the first time since Richard's will, I wasn't completely alone. Still, a question gnawed at me, sharp and unrelenting. I turned to Harris, my voice trembling. "If Richard is alive, do you know where he is?" Harris's gaze flickered, unreadable. He hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Caldwell, some things are better revealed at the right time. For now, focus on yourself. You've already carried more than anyone should." My heart sank. The answer wasn't no, but it wasn't yes either. That night, they placed me in a small safe house on the outskirts of the city. A modest place, quiet, with blinds drawn and guards stationed outside. The kind of house where the silence is thick enough to smother you. Alone in the dim bedroom, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Rain tapped against the window, a steady rhythm that reminded me of the Montana woods. My thoughts swirled, restless. Emma's face haunted me, her smirk during the will reading, her cold embrace as Oliver handed me the keys to the cabin. The way she had chosen him, chosen greed and power over her own mother. And beneath it all, one thought kept echoing in my mind, relentless, impossible to silence. If Richard had truly been alive all this time, why hadn't he come for me himself? The safe house was quiet, too quiet. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my body wrapped in heavy blankets that couldn't keep away the chill creeping through me. Sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Oliver's smirk, Emma's cold stare, or the flash of the gun in my own trembling hands. When dawn crept through the blinds, painting thin lines of light across the wall, I finally sat up. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind refused to rest. I pulled Richard's letter from my coat pocket and read it again. Even though I knew every word by heart now, I couldn't tell you. If I had, they would have killed you. You must be careful. Careful. The word felt hollow now. I wasn't careful when I pulled the trigger. I wasn't careful when I screamed for help. I wasn't careful when I walked into Harris's office with the evidence in plain sight. Maybe I didn't want to be careful anymore. Maybe I wanted this to end, no matter the cost. A knock at the door jolted me. My breath caught, panic flashing before I remembered the guards outside. A voice followed, steady and calm. "Mrs. Caldwell? Agent Harris is here." I opened the door to find him standing in the small living room, his suit neat despite the early hour, his expression unreadable. He gestured for me to sit. On the coffee table lay the bag I had carried across Montana. The evidence. "We've gone through it," Harris began, his tone measured. Your husband was meticulous. There are financial records, offshore accounts, even video recordings. Enough to bring down Oliver and his associates if we move carefully. Hope sparked inside me, fragile but bright. So it will end. Eventually, he said cautiously. But Oliver is powerful. People in his pocket run deeper than you realize. We can't storm in without exposing you. Right now, our priority is keeping you alive. Alive. I almost laughed. What good was being alive if it meant hiding in the shadows while my daughter lived like a queen beside the man who tried to kill me? I don't want to be protected, I said sharply. I want to see justice. I want to look Oliver in the eye when he falls. And I want Emma to see what she chose when she betrayed me. Harris studied me for a long moment, then leaned forward, his voice low. Mrs. Caldwell, I need you to understand something. If we go after them, your daughter will fall too. There's no separating them in this. Are you prepared for that? The question cut deep, tearing at my chest. Emma's face swam in my mind, her laugh as a child, the way she clutched my hand when she was nervous, the joy on her wedding day. And then the coldness at the lawyer's office, the stiff embrace when she sent me away. Tears blurred my vision. She made her choice, I whispered, my voice breaking. She chose him over me, over her father, over everything. Harris nodded solemnly. Then we'll move forward. He stood, gathering the files into a neat stack. I'll need to relocate you soon. Once Oliver realizes what we have, he'll unleash everything he has to silence you. Until then, stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. When he left, the silence returned, heavier than before. I wandered through the small rooms of the safe house, each one as bare and lifeless as the last. I tried to distract myself with the old television, the hum of static filling the air, but my thoughts wouldn't quiet. As night fell, I sat by the window, watching the street below. Shadows stretched across the pavement, headlights occasionally flashing past. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, a tired, broken woman clinging to scraps of hope. And then I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but no. There she was, standing across the street under a flickering lamp. Emma. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. She wore a dark coat, her hair pulled back neatly, her posture calm and deliberate. She didn't move, didn't call out, just watched the house with eyes I couldn't read. Tears stung my eyes as I pressed a hand to the glass. Emma, I whispered. For a moment, I imagined her running to me, arms open, telling me it had all been a mistake, that she had been forced, that she still loved me, that she wanted to protect me. My body ached with the longing to believe it. But then, slowly, she lifted a phone to her ear. Her lips moved, her expression cold, businesslike. My heart shattered all over again. She wasn't here to save me. She was here to mark me. Within minutes, a black SUV rolled into view, stopping at the curb. The doors opened, men stepping out with precision. Emma didn't even glance my way as she walked toward the vehicle, sliding inside without hesitation. It was all I needed to know. She was theirs, entirely. I stumbled back from the window, my whole body trembling. My own daughter had delivered me to them. Again, the door rattled suddenly, a violent shake that sent me stumbling. Voices shouted outside, deep and commanding. The guard stationed at the safe house responded, their orders sharp, but gunfire erupted before I could even process what was happening. I clutched the bag, heart hammering, every muscle frozen between fight and flight. It was happening. The walls that had felt like protection just hours ago were now a cage. And this time I knew there was no guarantee I'd make it out alive. The gunfire outside shook the walls of the safe house, echoing like thunder in my chest. I crouched low behind the couch, clutching Richard's bag, as if it were the only thing tethering me to life. My breath came shallow, ragged, each second stretched thin between the crack of bullets and the shouts of men. The front door rattled violently. Then, a deafening crash, the sound of it splintering under force. Heavy boots stormed inside. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. But another voice cut through the chaos. FBI, drop your weapons. I opened my eyes to see men in tactical gear flooding the house, their rifles raised, movements sharp and coordinated. The room filled with the sound of orders barked, weapons clattering to the ground, and the desperate cries of men caught off guard. It was over in seconds. Agent Harris appeared through the chaos, his face set like stone. He extended a hand to me, his voice calm but urgent. "It's all right now, Mrs. Caldwell. You're safe." I let him pull me to my feet, my legs trembling. My eyes darted to the window where, moments earlier, I had seen Emma. My chest ached. "Where's my daughter?" I whispered. Harris's gaze flickered. "She's in custody." We intercepted her call. She delivered Oliver's men straight to us. The words hit me harder than any gunfire could. My knees weakened, but I forced myself upright. "So it's true, she really—" "Yes," Harris said softly. She knew exactly what she was doing. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't collapse this time. I couldn't. Instead, I lifted my chin, the weight of years pressing down but not breaking me. Then she can face the consequences of her choices. Hours later, I sat in a stark interrogation room across from Oliver. His hands were cuffed to the table, but his arrogance hadn't dimmed. His suit was rumpled, his jaw tense, but his eyes still glittered with the same venomous confidence. "You think this ends with me," he sneered. "You think a bitter old woman and a few files will bring me down? I own people, Margaret. Judges, senators, even your daughter. You're nothing." For the first time in my life, I smiled at him, not with joy, but with the quiet strength of someone who had finally stopped being afraid. "You underestimated me, Oliver," I said evenly. "You thought I was weak, invisible, disposable, but it was me who carried this family for years while you preyed on it, and it's me who will watch you fall." He snarled, yanking against the cuffs, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking back. He was. When they led him away, his threats echoing down the hall, I felt no fear, only a deep, aching release. Days later, I was taken to a courthouse where Emma sat across the aisle, pale and defiant. She refused to meet my eyes, her chin lifted as though pride could shield her from shame. My heart twisted, but I didn't cry. Not this time, because I finally understood. Love doesn't excuse betrayal. Richard was brought into protective custody soon after. When I finally saw him again, alive and weary, my emotions tangled into something I couldn't untangle: love, anger, grief, relief. We embraced, but I whispered against his shoulder, "Never again. Don't you ever disappear on me again." His voice broke as he promised he wouldn't. But deep down, I knew something had changed. I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. I wasn't waiting in the shadows anymore. Weeks later, when Oliver and Emma's trials began, I sat quietly in the courtroom, clutching Richard's hand but standing firmly on my own 2 feet. I listened to the evidence unfold, to the lies unravel, to the empire they had built crumble piece by piece. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the victim. I felt like the survivor. The lesson was brutal, carved into me by betrayal, loss, and pain. But it was clear. Family is not defined by blood alone. It is defined by loyalty, love, and truth. And when those things are broken, you must find the strength to stand on your own, even if it means standing against the people you once loved most. When the gavel struck, sealing their fate, I closed my eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. Justice had been served, and so had I.